Well, welcome everyone to the Savvy Sales Lady Live. I am so glad that you're here because did you bring your popcorn? Did you bring a drink with you? Because we're going to talk about what can a CIA agent teach us about sales? I'm excited to bring this program to you, and I think it's going to be a fun one. So let's start out by imagine a CIA operative sitting across from an asset in a crowded market in Istanbul. He can't afford to look like he's in control. If the other man feels interrogated, the whole mission collapses. Instead, the spy lets the other person talk. He drops carefully crafted questions, collects information, and validates responses just enough to keep trust alive. The spy knows the real power isn't in the talking, it's in the asking. And that's exactly what we're unpacking today. How you, as a salesperson or anyone who wants to influence, can control a conversation with the same subtlety as an operative on foreign soil. Now, this applies to whether you're an entrepreneur, a solopreneur, a salesperson, an account executive, anyone that is selling a product or service. This is vital information that I think you're going to enjoy. People that have been in sales a long time will notice some similarities here. So let's get into the first mission. Who really controls the conversation? Do you know? Excuse me. Who really controls the conversation? Let's get into that.
let's talk about controlling a conversation first, because controlling a conversation is very closely tied with asking effective questions or asking what you might call better questions. So controlling a conversation is first about understanding who's actually in control of a conversation. Most people think the person in control of a conversation is the person who talks the most. In reality, the person in control of a conversation is the person who asks the most questions. So in our interview together, Doug, who's in control of this conversation?
I am.
You are. That means that you can control what we talk about next. You can control how long the conversation lasts. You can control my energy level in this conversation because you control the questions. When you ask a question, you can decide whether that question takes us in a new direction, takes us deeper into the same direction, whether that question takes us in a direction where I am interested and excited, or whether it takes us into a direction where I'm less interested and maybe more mellow.
Okay. Now, sound familiar? Who's in control of the conversation? The person asking the questions. We know this. So, in most conversations, people often misunderstand this. They think the loudest voice is in charge. But you, as a sales pro, you know that that's not true. The one asking the question directs the flow, decides how deep to go, and shapes the energy of the entire exchange. As a salesperson, the moment you stop talking and start asking, you quietly seize control of the meeting, right? Okay, let's go to mission number 2. The question is the weapon.
Open questions or open-ended questions and closed-ended questions. Most people will make the mistake of asking closed-ended questions because they're very focused on trying to reach a certain conclusion. So a closed-ended question is a question that can be answered with a simple yes, no response, right? If it can be answered with one word, then it's a closed-ended question, right? What's your favorite color? Green. Did you like that restaurant? Yes. What's your favorite ethnic food? Korean food. These are all closed-ended questions. There's no critical thinking that's required. There's no way of gaining information from your targets. With an open-ended question, the whole objective is to gain more information than what you give. Because information is the true currency of any relationship. The more information you can collect about someone else, the more power you have in that relationship, the closer and the more perceived loyalty that person has to you, because they believe that they are giving you more information because you are someone that can be trusted with that information.
And it's all about trust, isn't it? That's the whole goal. Spies have 2 categories of questions in their arsenal, and so do salespeople, closed and open. Closed questions are blunt instruments, yes or no, one-word answers, nothing more. And rookie salespeople get in the habit of asking too many closed-ended questions in a sales conversation. You really should only ask maybe 1 or 2 closed-ended questions, because the idea is to gather information, right? So rarely, if you ask someone a one-worded closed-ended question, will they yield more intel? Open-ended questions, on the other hand, are precision tools. They invite stories, details, and emotion. They make people reveal themselves without really realizing it. For you, that means asking, what does this matter to your team if you don't move forward? How is this going to affect your team if you don't move forward? Instead of, does this affect your team? And they can say yes or no. So why does this matter to you about how this is going to affect your team? See, that invites a conversation. The other doesn't. It shuts the conversation down. So you want to open the door to a further conversation to drill down into what really matters. Okay, let's go to mission number 3, the currency of information.
Open-ended question, the whole objective is to gain more information than what you give. Because information is the true currency of any relationship. The more information you can collect about someone else, the more power you have in that relationship, the closer and the more perceived loyalty that person has to you, because they believe that they are giving you more information because you are someone that can be trusted with that information. Really like food from India and from Asia. Oh, can you tell me more about why you like those foods? Right? So now we're asking questions that are not binary, questions that can't be answered in one word. And what that turns into is people talking about their travel. They're talking about their first date. They're talking about their palate. They're talking about, this is all information that we start to gather from people because we're asking open-ended questions. So a real quick rule of thumb, if you're asking a question that is what, or who, or do, like do you know how, or do you know when, if you're asking a question that starts with do, who, or what, you're asking a closed-ended question. If you're asking a how or why question, you're asking an open-ended question, right? How did you first learn about Chinese food versus do you like Chinese food?
Okay. Tell me more is one of my favorite ways to open people up to a deeper conversation. Tell me more. To a CIA officer, information is gold, and it should be gold for you too as a sales professional. It buys leverage, trust, and options. And the same is so true in sales. Every open-ended question you ask adds to your intelligence file on the prospect. Remember, you're looking for clues. You're looking for clues. Is this prospect open to buying? You're looking for their pain points, their preferences, their worldview. All of it strengthens your ability to guide the conversation. Remember, you control by asking and collecting, not by commanding and interrogating. So we're going to phase over into mission number 4, which is the 2-question rule, which is very similar to what I teach in the question statement rule that I teach. So let's get to that.
Is a great point, because what you never want to do when you control a conversation, you never want to make the other person feel like they are under control, because that's going to shape their response. If someone feels like they're in a conversation where they're being interrogated or they're being questioned or they're being directed, then that's going to make them take more defensive action and more defensive sense of responses. So to your point, the way that you bury your intention or hide your intention to control a conversation is through a process that we call 2 questions and a validation, right? So 2 questions and a response, basically. So you ask a question, and then you ask a related follow-up question, and then instead of asking a third question, you validate or confirm what the other person just said. So as an example, if you're talking to somebody and you say, uh, where did you first learn about painting? And they say, oh, I first learned about painting when I was a child because my mom used to paint, on the front patio. Oh, what did your mom paint on the front patio? Oh, my mom always painted the sunrise over the cornfields because she loved the view from the front patio. Well, this is a point now where you've asked two questions that are related to each other to try to direct the conversation. You don't want to ask a third question because now if you ask a third question, you start highlighting to the person that you're prying into their private life. So instead, you want to validate and confirm what they say. So then you might validate that by saying, my grandmother used to paint also, and she would love to paint beach scenes because the beach is someplace that made her happy.
Okay, like I said, this is very similar to what I teach as well. So the 2 question and a validation, or 2 questions and a statement rule. So here's a piece of spy tradecraft you can use immediately, which is the 2 question, then validation rule. Why? Because it's more conversational. It doesn't feel like you're drilling down and interrogating rapid fire question after question after question. You just ask one question, then you follow it up with a second related question. And instead of hammering with a third question, you pause and validate what they've said with either one of your life experiences or one that you can share. And that validation can be an agreement, a personal connection, or even a respectful contrast. This way, your target or your prospect never feels interrogated. They feel understood. And when people feel understood, they talk more. And when they talk more, they get more comfortable with you and start to trust you, and rapport building begins. That's why it's so, so important. Now, we are going to take a quick break. It's only 30 seconds, and we'll be right back with mission 5, 6, and 7. Stay with me, Christine Harrington, the Savvy Sales Lady. If you like the Savvy Sales Lady Live, you're really going to like the Savvy Sales Lady newsletter. It's delivered in your inbox once a week. Why don't you go ahead and subscribe? The link is in the show notes below so you won't miss this upcoming newsletter. I give you one tip to focus on each week to implement immediately into your sales day. Why not sign up and learn just a little bit more? All right, why not sign up and learn a little bit more? If it's not your cup of tea, you can easily unsubscribe. The link is in the show notes below. All right, let's get to mission number 5, perception versus, perception versus perspective.
2 answers that come to my mind right away, right? And the first one has to do with understanding the difference between perception and perspective. Because what happens is most of us don't realize that perception and perspective are 2 different things. Perception is how you see the world around you. Perspective is how other people see the world around you. So for example, when you're sitting there at a dinner table across from your spouse or across from your friend or across from your kids, the way that you see the dinner table, the way that you taste that dinner, the way that you feel the temperature in the room, all of that is your perception. Your children, your spouse, your partner, your friend, they all have a completely different perception of what's happening at that dinner table. So when you are able to see the dinner table and the room from their point of view, that means you have gained a greater perspective. And there's a huge advantage in having perspective, because once you have perspective, you're closer to the objective truth about what's happening in that moment. Whereas as long as you're trapped in your own perception, you're literally stuck in your own subjective reality. which isn't as accurate or complete as the other people in the room.
Okay. It's just another layer of spy training. Perception versus perspective. Perception is how you see the world. Perspective is how they see the world, which there could be a big disconnect in sales between the salesperson's perception and the perspective of the prospect. A spy who can step into another's perspective gains the advantage. And that holds true for you too, because in sales, the same principle applies. When you stop clinging to your script and start seeing the world through your buyer's lenses, you're no longer a seller, you're a partner. And that shift builds faster than any pitch deck ever when you put yourself in the prospect's shoes. You've heard that before. Now let's go on to mission 6, managing fear in the field.
Called the anatomy of fear and where fear actually comes from. Because fear is not what most of us think it is. We think it's some kind of uncontrollable response that just happens in our subconscious. In reality, fear is a mental process. It's a process that starts with some sort of external input, and that external input then goes through a very predictable scientific chemical response in our brain, where it is then translated into some kind of fear response. So as an example, I'm sure you've had a moment where you've been startled by something that you saw. You thought you saw a rat in the corner, or you thought you saw a snake on the ground. And in an instant, your heart rate shot up, you started to sweat, you become very afraid of this one thing until you look at it closer and you realize it's just a dirty pair of socks in the corner. That process that happened in your brain that went from immediate panic until this, just a few seconds later, this moment of clarity, that's a chemical predictable response in the human brain. And you can actually learn to manage your fear and manage your anxiety better when you understand that process and how it works in your brain, because you can practice the process of slowing down the chemical reaction.
Yep. Oh boy, that old fear, it can really get to us, can't it? So fear is not what most of us think. That's what he said, slowing down that chemical reaction. Fear isn't random. It's predictable. It's a chemical process in the brain. Spies are trained to recognize it and slow it down. As a salesperson, your fear might spike when you hear an objection or when silence stretches longer than you'd like. But when you understand fear is just a process, a rat that turns out to be a sock in the corner, you can manage it, right? And a calm agent, that's the one who wins the mission. That's why you want to be a calm salesperson and not get rattled over an objection that you may not have an answer for, or a benefit question that you may not have an immediate answer for. Okay, let's move on to mission number 7, the last one, communication with the unmovable.
Called the anatomy. There's two important things here that you have to understand. One, when you're talking to somebody who isn't open to cognitive dissonance, there is no value in challenging their point of view. So you're investing energy and investing time into something with a negative return on investment. So if you're talking to somebody who isn't open to a new point of reference, don't waste your time trying to convince them that they are wrong or trying to convince them that they need to change their point of view. Do not do that. That's what most of us do. It's a complete waste of time. Instead, recognize early that they are unwilling to change. And then once you recognize that they are unwilling to change, the most useful thing that you can do is start to adopt their point of view. If you are the one who's open to changing your worldview, especially if you're willing and open to changing your worldview on a case-by-case basis, meaning right now I'm talking to somebody who is pro-Israel, and they're never going to see the Palestinian plight as a valid plight. So regardless of how I feel, I will adopt a pro-Israel point of view for this conversation. We as communicators need to be willing to take that step instead of standing on this principled like soapbox preaching that everyone else needs to change their point of reference. No, you as the communicator need to take responsibility for the fact that if you want to communicate effectively, you have to change to match the other audience and where they are at that moment. So the first thing we need to do is be willing to recognize that if our audience is not open to a new point of view, don't fight it. That's the first step. The second step is then actively practicing this process of neuroplasticity and changing your perception into perspective so that you can adapt to the point of reference that the audience has. That's going to help you be that much more effective in getting your point across, building some sort of relationship, establishing trust, making the sale, whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish through communication.
He's exactly right. What I talk about all the time is align with the prospect. Align with the prospect. That's really what you want to do. If someone comes to you, let's say through your website, and you have different ideas of how the conversation will go, or you have a different idea about their solutions, instead of trying to convince them of what you want them to do, align with them. Align with them. Show them that you're going to be a partner with them. So what happens when you encounter someone that's locked in to their worldview, or they're unwilling to budge about solutions? A rookie argues, a pro adapts. So keep that in mind. In the field, a CIA officer doesn't waste time trying to convert the unconvertible. And don't we see this all the time in social media and comments where people are arguing back and forth? And the more you argue, the other side digs in and you dig in and you get nowhere, right? So instead, adopt the other's frame long enough to keep the communication alive. You can do the same in sales. Don't fight entrenched beliefs. Step into them, speak their language, and find common ground. That keeps the mission moving forward. Align with the prospect. All right. So here's your debrief, okay? Control comes from asking, not talking. Open questions gather intel. Closed ones shut the door. 2 questions and then a validation statement. Keep people open and talking. Perception is yours. Perspective is theirs. Step into both. Fear is predictable. Manage it. And when you do, you'll stay sharp. And when you hit an immovable wall, don't fight it. Adapt and align. Okay? The next time you step into a sales conversation, don't think of yourself as another rep. Think of yourself as an operative on assignment. Calm, observant, and strategic. Your mission? Extract the truth, earn their trust, and guide the outcome by asking questions and aligning. because in sales, as in the spy world, the one asking the questions always controls the game. Now, if you'd like more tips tailored just for you, I'm offering a reduced price power coaching session just for you. I know that this can be overwhelming and I've thrown at you a lot of information, but if you have unique needs and issues, which you probably do, the link is in the first comment on the Savvy Sales Lady Live YouTube channel, and in the first chat too is the link. And if you're interested in watching this entire conversation, which I strongly recommend that you do, I'll put the link in the description area of the video on YouTube so you can watch the entire conversation. This CIA agent, and now his name just escaped me. I really like him and he's really good. So I hope you enjoyed this Savvy Sales Lady Live. If you're coming in late, you can watch the replay on the Savvy Sales Lady YouTube channel, on LinkedIn, and on Facebook. It was streamed to all three. So remember, everyone, stay savvy, right? And I'm sure I haven't solved all your problems. So I'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.